Welcome, visitor, to this tour of the Northern Australian Railway. It's hard to imagine the social and industrial change ushered in by the 19th century golden era of steam. Trains replaced uncomfortable, expensive, and time-consuming trips by camel, horse, and bullock wagons, stagecoach, ship. Roads in the early days were impassable. Railways allowed people to travel to work. In countries such as Canada and the US, railway lines ran from coast to coast, making isolated towns, fostered settlement, and were regarded as instruments of nation building. In Australia, however, railway mania was parochial and uncoordinated. Rather than linking isolated towns and seaboards, railway lines were built to link ports with local outback, not city with city. Each colony jealously developed autonomous economies and railway systems with different gauges and little thought for transcontinental travel. It was to be another 100 years before gauges on the national railway system were standardized. Pastoralism is one of the great industries of the Northern Territory. It's suddenly been an important part of the territory's identity. The period between the 1860s to 1895 was a time of large-scale pastoral settlement and development in the Northern Territory. Immense runs were taken up and large sums of money invested, and hundreds and thousands of sheep, cattle, and horses were overlanded to stock the new properties. The 19th century was Australia's pioneering era, with gold seekers, adventurers, and pastoralists seeking new land and fortunes. In South Australia, farmers moved north across Goyder's drought line in an attempt to find arable land, good seasons giving them confidence in the quaint belief that rain follows the plough. Railways were needed to bring the wheat and mining produce to Port Augusta and Adelaide, but these early lines were seen as the start of a transcontinental line that would foster the development of mining, tropical agriculture, and trade with Asia. With the commencement of the Southern Line in 1878, reaching towards Untitled in 1891, the newspapers of the time wrote, "If it only went to Port Darwin, it would be worth constructing, but in going there, it went to Java, India, Siam, and China, and also shortened the communications with Europe and America." The line would ramify eventually to Queensland and New South Wales, and who could tell the full benefits which would accrue from connecting all these colonies with the iron band of a railway. In 1855, the first New South Wales Railway Governor spoke at the time, when the whole country would be covered with a network of railways to help develop the resources of the country and increase the value of the vast territory now lying waste. By 1861, there were 390 kilometres of line in Australia. By 1871, there were 1,657 kilometers, and by 1881 there were 6,456 kilometers in the 6 colonies. Port Darwin is one of the finest harbours in Australia. So sure as to tomorrow follows today, this magnificent harbour will be the Singapore of Australia, provided, of course, certain works are undertaken and restrictions removed. The work I refer principally to is the Transcontinental Line, an undertaking which is bound to be carried out in time and which will connect the two splendid ports of Augusta and Darwin. As these comments from some collector of customs, Alfred Searchy, show, the vision of a railway linking with Darwin's deep natural port is hardly new. Searchy's comments were made in 1909, reflecting on his time in Darwin in the 1890s. The Adelaide-Darwin Railway, the first suggestion of a transcontinental railway between Adelaide and the tropical north, came from a Melbourne businessman, J. Robertson, in 1858. The South Australian government showed no interest at the time, but private interest led to the formation of the Great Northern Railway Company of South Australia in 1869. It was incorporated with a capital of £1 million to enter into an agreement or agreements with the government of South Australia for the construction of the railway from Port Augusta. Nothing came of this or later proposals, but in 1878, South Australia finally began to build its 3 feet 6 inch gauge Great Northern Railway. Starting in Port Augusta, it was expected to reach Darwin within a short time. It finally reached Marie in 1883 and was extended to reach Untitled in 1891. I became interested in the Northern Australian Railway when I was in Darwin 2007. I explored many of the cycle paths which followed the old Pine Creek Railway route. In particular, the route from Darwin to Palmerston follows 20 kilometers over the old track and bridges. Some of the old track has been preserved, and certainly as you ride the cycle path, you pass over the old concrete embankments. Along these cycle paths one passes lots of interpretive signs about the raft-based siding. During the Second World War, a spur line was run from the Northern Australian Railway to the new raft base, and the war demands led to great expansion in the use of the railway. The Palmerston and Pine Creek Line. In 1883, the John Cox Bray Government introduced the Palmerston and Pine Creek Railway Bill. The line reached Pine Creek in 1888, so officially opened 30th of September 1889. Some 3,000 Chinese laborers worked on this part of the line. Many different proposals have been made since to join Pine Creek with Unadada. When the Commonwealth